Just as its neighbor Iceland, the Faroe Islands possess impressive landscapes that cannot be seen in other parts of the world. With villages in mountainous locations or close to the coast, great cliffs, waterfalls, snowy lakes, and fjords. One of the most impressive cliffs is the one you see from Mount Villingardahlsfjall, north of the island of Streymoy. A place difficult to reach but very worthwhile for these beautiful views. First rises with a steep incline, a terrain full of grass of a vibrant green, and then descends vertically towards the ocean. These are the diverse places that I will show you on these islands. In the Faroe Islands, climate is not extremely cold. The days can be very cloudy and with strong winds. Much of the territory is composed of mountains like this, with uneven sloping terrains, enormous cliffs, and rocky areas. The Faroe Islands are a unique case in the world because they are considered a nation within the Kingdom of Denmark. It is an archipelago of 18 islands located in the North Atlantic between the United Kingdom, Norway, and Iceland. It is self-governing in practically all aspects except defense, foreign relations, legal system, and currency policy. As for its history and culture, due to its geographical isolation, they have developed their own unique identity over the years. Something that also happens with nearby islands like Iceland. Watch the video to learn how people live in the Faroe Islands, places you should visit, the most isolated villages where you won't believe people still live, the customs of its inhabitants, and their traditions. If you are Faroese or have visited the islands, write in the comments other places to visit, or tell us what life is like there. This is one of the incredible sceneries you can see in the Faroe Islands. The city you see is called Klaksvík, which despite being so small, is the second most populous locality in the Faroe Islands. This city has been inhabited since the Viking era. In fact, ancient ruins of Viking farms were found in the area at the beginning of the 20th century. It had less than 100 inhabitants and currently has about 5,000. The majority of people in Klaksvík are dedicated to fishing, as it is the largest port of the Faroe Islands with 30% of the territory's production. Some people work in restaurants, and others work at Faroe Brewery, a company that produces beer and other beverages. As you can imagine, life in this city is very tranquil. Moreover, the temperatures are not as low as you might imagine. In January, the coldest month, it is between 4 to 6 degrees, and in summer between 9 to 12 degrees Celsius. As you can see, the city is situated in a valley surrounded by mountains called Mørkinoiðarfjall, Hafjall, Halgafelli, Klokker, and Fellid. Due to this situation, throughout its history, it has suffered some rock slides and snow avalanches. The second is Kalsoy Island, in the northeast of the Faroe Islands. Another impressive place that seems to have come out of a movie. It has less than 100 inhabitants, and like other islands that we will show, it is isolated. You can only get here from Klaksvík by taking a ferry that takes about 20 minutes. There are no roads, tunnels, or bridges that connect Kalsoy with other islands. Here, the James Bond film No Time to Die was filmed. It's where the villain's lair is located, and it seems a good choice due to the mysterious and foggy appearance of the island. It has large cliffs, steep slopes, and is an important bird breeding area, highlighting the curious Atlantic puffin, which I will also talk about. Its area is 30.9 square kilometers. Its highest point measures 787 meters. To get around the island, there are buses and tunnels that are very narrow and can be uncomfortable if you have never driven through them. Besides Husar, Mikladalur, Sidradalur, and Trollanes, which are the 4 settlements on the island, on Kalsoy you can only find the Collar Lighthouse. The third, driving in the Faroe Islands, is a surprising experience due to the beautiful scenery, although it can also release adrenaline due to some passages. Not suitable for beginner drivers. The maximum speed is 80 kilometers per hour on main roads, 50 in cities. There are 600 kilometers of roads in the archipelago, and outside the capital, there are no traffic jams. Beside the road, there are often sheep that are calmly resting. Sometimes they cross from one side to the other, You may experience strong winds, long tunnels over the sea, and the so-called Faroes fog, which is very common. This fog sometimes affects travel between islands or daily life, since once it descends over the island, you cannot drive and cannot see very far. That is why it is a legal requirement to always turn on the lights when driving. To go to some islands, like Kalsoy, it is only necessary to take a ferry and bring the car. As you can see, the tunnels can be narrow and one-way. This is the so-called Vanessons Tunnel. It was built in 1967 and is 2,120 meters long. The fourth is Beinisfjord, another of the most surprising great cliffs of the Faroe Islands. Due to its steep incline that reaches a triangular peak, it is 469 meters high, making it the second highest in the islands. It is located in Suðuroy, the southernmost island of the archipelago, between the towns of Lopra and Sumba, where Faroese live, who for generations descended the cliff wall, risking their lives to collect birds and eggs that were once an important part of their diet. For decades, these cliffs have inspired famous Faroese poets such as Poul F. Johnson, who mentioned Beinisfjord as a spiritual guardian of the islands. Another famous Faroese poet, Janus Djurhuus, used it as a symbol of the island's independence. These are other incredible cliffs of Suðuroy. Faroe Islands are of volcanic origin. They began to form millions of years ago when Greenland and Europe began to separate. These cliffs formed over time, over millions of years, by the action of wind, rain, and waves that gradually eroded the rock. The birds you see are mainly northern fulmars. It is estimated that there are about 100,000 pairs, but there are also manx, shearwaters, black-legged kittiwakes, Atlantic puffins, and common guillemots. Fulmars have nests on the rocks. They go in search of squid, shrimp, fish, and jellyfish to eat and feed their chicks. They build their nests on the cliffs, forming pairs for life. The puffins are the most numerous species after the fulmars. It is estimated that there are about 500,000 pairs across all the island. These birds are always at sea and can be observed diving to fish. You take a boat that moves away from the coast, they form colonies on the cliffs where they build burrows to raise their chicks. The puffin is also a monogamous species that remains faithful to its partner for life. They choose each other at sea and meet in the cliff colony during mating season. Fifth, wind energy has great importance in the Faroe Islands. Therefore, it is possible to see in some areas of the islands large wind turbines in wind farms. In fact, it is expected that in less than 10 years, wind energy will be the largest source of renewable energy consumed. The Faroe Islands are not connected to the European continent by power line, so they cannot import or export energy. Sixth, another of the most spectacular places in the Faroe Islands is the Mulafossar waterfall, which translates as promontory waterfall. With a height of 30 meters, the water falls directly into the sea as if in a fantasy film, and it is located south of the village of Gásadalur on the island of Vágar. Gásadalur is another of the picturesque villages of the archipelago, with a small population of 11 people. To reach any other village by land, the residents had to pass through a mountainous route over 400 meters high, which makes the village very isolated and difficult to increase its population. Seventh, the largest and most populous island of the Faroe Islands is Streymoy, where the capital, Tórshavn, is located with about 14,000 inhabitants. It is a mountainous island with fjords, lakes, beaches, and enormous cliffs. Grass is the predominant vegetation, and there are no trees naturally, although villages have planted some. Tórshavn is one of the smallest capitals in the world. Much of the population lives from fishing, and it is possible to book boats to fish for cod, shark, flounder, and other fish. The historic part of this place, called Tinganes, is well worth a walk. Here you will find small houses with grass roofs and alleys from sailor or fisherman movies. In the past, in this location, Viking chiefs met annually, and currently it houses the office of the Prime Minister of the Faroe Islands, as well as other government departments. Additionally, some of the best restaurants on the islands are located here. Taking a boat trip allows you to experience all the natural beauty of the island. Generally, the captains of these boats tell stories during the trip about local landmarks and about the characteristics of the natural environment. These trips travel through impressive rock formations and basalt cliffs. 8th, in Kivik, west of Streymoy, are the known as Kivik igloos, one of the small, prefabricated houses, but with a traditional grass roof and serves to heat. They are made with the idea of respecting the environment, providing also a place for birds to nest. As you see, they have a hexagonal shape and a certain appearance of a hobbit house from The Lord of the Rings. 9th, the second largest island in size and population is Eysturoy. It is extremely mountainous with 66 isolated peaks, with Slettara-Tinder being the highest point of the islands at 880 meters altitude. On a clear day, it is possible to see from here the Vatnajökull, the largest glacier in Iceland. In Eysturoy, the coastal town of Leirvik is located, with less than 1,000 inhabitants. 10th, Liatdimmun is the smallest island of the archipelago, uninhabited and less than 1 square kilometer. The second smallest is Coulter, where as far as we know, only one farmer lives and receives mail and other deliveries by means of a helicopter paid for by the government. 11th, besides the impressive landscapes in the Faroe Islands, it is also possible to see the northern lights, although it is not the best place on the planet for not being so far north. The best time is in winter, from November to February, on nights with clear skies and low temperatures, especially below 0 degrees. Another advantage of traveling to the islands in winter is that you will find few tourists if you prefer tranquility, although the weather can be worse. 12th, in the Faroe Islands, the summers are short, cool, and windy, and the winters are long, quite cold, and humid. Throughout the year, the temperature varies from 1 to 12 degrees Celsius. On rare occasions, the temperature drops below -2 degrees or rises above 14. 13th, the status of the Faroe Islands is unique in the world because the country is within the Kingdom of Denmark. This archipelago has been colonized since the 10th century by Nordic Viking migrants, although it is believed that before, it may have been inhabited by Celtic settlements. Their language, or Faroese, is one of the 3 insular Scandinavian languages that derive from the ancient Norse language, a unique language that was modified with words from English and Irish, among others. The Faroes are the natives of the Faroe Islands, most of Scandinavian and Celtic origin. Due to the isolation of the islands, they have maintained many of the traditions over the years. Besides whales and puffins, one of the most curious foods of the Faroes is dried fish, which sometimes can be seen hanging outside the houses. 14th, throughout the Faroe Islands, near the villages, it is possible to see the Highland cows that have large horns and a thick coat of brown color. It is a hardy breed, prepared to withstand cold and rainy conditions, with the ability to hibernate. The meat is considered high quality. The domestic animals of the Faroe Islands are the result of 1,200 years of breeding in isolation. Therefore, many of them cannot be found in other parts of the world. The Faroe pony is small and strong, 115 to 125 centimeters tall, good for work and resistant to cold. Currently, there are a little less than 100 individuals of this breed, having been very close to extinction. In 1960, only 4 remain. The sheep are also small, with a long white or black coat, and there are many of them. In fact, there are more sheep than people. It is estimated that there are about 70,000. 15th, Cape Enneberg on the island of Viðoy is the highest cliff in the islands and the second highest in Europe, with an impressive 754 meters. It is the northernmost point of the Faroe Islands. Do you want to visit it? You can go by boat in the summer, but also be able to see the bird colony that lives in the area. 16th, one of the most characteristic traditional foods of the islands is the puffin, although currently there are restrictions on its hunting due to the decrease in population. The traditional way of hunting them is from the land, using the flaggastong, a net between 2 thin arms attached to a long stick. The fulmar is also hunted in August. The chicks fall from the nests in the fjords and, as they cannot fly, they stay in the water, making it easy to capture them with nets. 17th, the most controversial practice in the Faroe Islands is the hunting of pilot whales and different species of dolphins, known as grindra. The defenders of this tradition, which is more than 1,000 years old, claim that it is a source of food and economic sustenance for the inhabitant. There is no hunting season, although it is generally carried out from June to October. The use of harpoons, firearms, or lances is prohibited at sea, so hunters have to sacrifice the whales and dolphins on the beaches, which causes the waters to become bloodied. Just as it happened in Iceland, it may be that whale-watching tourism replaces hunting as a source of economic resources. 18th, there are still traditional houses with grass on the roof in the Faroe Islands, just like in Iceland. This Nordic tradition has existed since the first inhabitants of the Viking era. When they arrived, there weren't many trees on the islands, but grass was abundant. They are built with pieces of grass to which wood or stone can be added, which helps in insulation from the cold. A problem with these traditional houses is that they needed constant maintenance and cannot withstand heavy rains. However, those that have been built recently are well prepared, while helping with natural insulation from the cold, saving electricity. So that you have an idea of how houses were more than 100 years ago, this is a traditional house in 1898 made of stone and grass. 19th, on the island of Mykines, the westernmost of the archipelago, there is a wide variety of migratory seabirds, including the puffin, which we have already talked about. You will find many nests of puffins and other species of seabirds, such as gannets. Therefore, it is considered a true paradise for bird scholars. To get to Mykines, you need to take a ferry from Sørvágur, which normally travels twice a day if the weather is favorable. The island is almost inaccessible. Currently, it has only 16 permanent residents. 20th, the Leitisvatn Lake, also known as Sørvágsvatn, is a natural wonder that will surprise you with a curious optical effect. From a certain angle, it seems to be above the ocean as if it were floating. Additionally, you will be impressed by the Buzdalafossur waterfall. The hike to the lake takes approximately 1 hour, starting at the church of Midvugr. 21st is one of the oldest villages in the Faroe Islands. Viking tombs from the year 950 were found here, which proves that it has been inhabited since the arrival of the first settlers to the islands. It has about 70 inhabitants, and as you can see, it is in a place that could have been the inspiration for a Viking series or film. 22nd. This is Drangarnir, two strange rock formations between Vagar and the islet of Tindhólmur. It is also one of the most photographed places in the Faroe Island. Two rocks are called Stóri Drangur and Litli Drangur. Tindhólmur, the islet, has a surprising irregular cliff and an almost vertical peak that must scare people with vertigo just by looking at it. Legend has it that a family lived here a long time ago, and while the father was fishing, an eagle took his son and carried him to the nest that was located on one of the peaks. The mother climbed to the peak but found the son badly injured, so he died after being rescued. It is said that the family moved away, and since then no one else has lived on Tindhólmur. 23rd, Saksun is a beautiful isolated village in the north of Kalsoy Island. It has less than 20 inhabitants, and due to its impressive location, its photos are frequent on social media. Here, there's a statue of the seal woman Kopakonan. According to local legend, seals were men who voluntarily sought death in the ocean. Once a year, they could return to land, take off their skins, and enjoy themselves as human beings. 24th, in Kirkjubøur, on Streymoy, is the wooden house that has been inhabited for the longest time in the world. It was the home of 17 generations of the same family, and due to its importance, some parts of the house have been transformed into a museum open to the public because it is considered a cultural treasure. Nearby are St. Olav's Cathedral and Magnus Cathedral, both very ancient buildings. 25th, Nólsoy is only 20 minutes by ferry from the capital. Here you can see incredible night shows given by the storm petrels, seabirds with black and white coloring. Additionally, You can hire a guide to walk through the hills to the cliffs where the birds are. Another tourist attraction in this area are the Nalsoy Lighthouse and Borden Lighthouse, where 2 lighthouses were built. The population on this island is about 200 to 230 inhabitants. 26. Skúvoy is an island with only 37 inhabitants, named after the skua birds that take refuge and nest there before returning on their way across the sea in autumn. It is also a nesting site for puffins. It can only be visited for a day, since there is no place that provides accommodation services, so you can go to observe the birds and then spend the night on the island of Sandoy. During the first week of June, local residents collect eggs because it is an ingredient in the typical gastronomy of the region. 27th. Raised kjøtt is a traditional process for preparing meat, especially lamb. The term means roasted, and the procedure consists of hanging the meat to dry on the roofs of houses, a method that dates back many years and is closely related to the availability of food on the islands. It can be used for fish, sheep, and also for whales or birds. 28th. The problem of the Faroe Islands is that there are few women, so men have been looking for wives in countries like Thailand or the Philippines. Currently, there are about 300 Thai and Filipino women living here. The low number of women has to do with the fact that many Faroese women decide to live abroad. So the new inhabitants of the islands must face a cultural change and a new language, but they are also very well received since people are very open to those who move to live here. 29th. The Kappróðr boat race is a national sport in the islands. There have been rowing competitions since 1930. Currently, these competitions follow a regular routine. They are held in 7 different locations during the weekends of July and August. These races are part of a regional festival called Stevna, which includes many other activities. The first regatta is held in Klaksvík, and the last one takes place in Tórshavn, one day before the national day called Ólafsøka. Therefore, it is not always held on Saturday, but on the day it falls, July 28th. 30th. Faroese music is traditionally vocal without the use of instruments. Only in Tórshavn were violins used. During the 20th century, with the growth of trade, imported musical instruments began to be used, although rural villages have remained faithful to the traditions of chain dance and ballad. 31st. HB Tórshavn is the oldest football club in the Faroe Islands and was founded in 1892. Since 2020, this team has become a member of the Club of Pioneers, which is a network of old football clubs. As you can see, the football fields can be in impressive places. The one you see is in Eyði, a town in Eysturoy. As an autonomous territory, the Faroe Islands have a men's and women's national football team that participate in the qualifications for the European Cup and World Cup, although they have never reached the final phase. 32nd. Parliament of the Faroe Islands is called the Lagting and is one of the oldest in the world, originating in the Viking era of the year 1000. It has 33 members from various political groups. There is practically no corruption in the Faroe Islands, just like in Denmark, one of the countries with the least corruption. 33rd. There are different historical figures from the Faroe Islands. One of them is Grímur Kambon, the first Viking of the islands. Burroughs' saga says that he was a Norse Viking who escaped from the tyranny of Viking King Harald. Although it is a mistake, since Harald ruled in the late 9th century, and the first Faroese arrived after the year 825. Vigmundur Brestason, a Faroese Viking chief, responsible for bringing Christianity to the islands in the year 999, is one of the main characters in the Faroes saga. Also, Niels Ryberg Finnsson, Faroes Icelandic doctor and scientist, who won the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology in 1903. 34th. The Faroe Islands are not an independent country because they depend on the Kingdom of Denmark for issues such as international relations, politics, or military defense, although there are many points for which they can be called a country. First of all, there is the territory isolated from Denmark and the European continent geographically. The Faroe Islands are considered part of Europe, but are not part of the European Union, In contrast, Denmark has been part of the European Union since 1973. For example, when the European Union imposed sanctions on Russia in 2014 for its invasion of Donbass, the Faroe Islands exported salmon to Russia. However, in 2022, the Faroese parliament approved sanctions against Russia for the invasion of Ukraine. The Faroe Islands also have their own culture, traditions, customs, and gastronomy. They have their own national sports teams, parliament, and ministries. They differ from most European countries in cultural aspect. Regarding fertility, in the islands there is one of the highest rates in Europe, with an average of 2.4 children per woman. In contrast, in the Kingdom of Denmark, there are 1.6 children per woman. Also, there is Faroese, which resembles more Icelandic and Old Norse than Danish. 35th. You may be wondering what is necessary to travel to the Faroe Islands. Citizens with passports from Nordic countries do not need a passport to enter, but must present an identity document from their country and can stay indefinitely. Citizens with passports from the European Union or Schengen countries do not need a visa or permission to visit the islands, but must present their passport or an identification document from their country. Other non-European nationalities that need a visa to enter are the same as for Denmark. For tourist purposes, citizens with passports from Argentina, Mexico, Brazil, or the United States do not need a visa. If you decide to go to the Faroe Islands, carefully check the requirements on the official Danish website. If you want to go to the Faroe Islands to work and live, if you are not from a Nordic country, you will need to apply to the Danish Immigration Service and have an offer of 40 hours per week in a job that needs to be filled. About 90% of the Faroe Islands exports are products derived from fishing. Therefore, it is the sector that generates the most jobs. Have you visited the Faroe Islands, or are you Faroese? Leave in the comments other data or places to visit. If you want to know more about an incredible country that is also very close, check out this video about Iceland. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe with the bell activated so you don't miss other videos like this.